If he dies under your hands, that'll prove it. You were never fit to be a nurse." The boarding-house parlor went quiet for a heartbeat after the sheriff said it. Only the ticking clock and the hiss of the coal stove answered him. Miss Eleanor Ellie Caldwell stood very still behind the reception counter of the tiny clinic, her cheeks burning hot despite the cold Wyoming wind rattling the windows. She'd heard worse in 8 years on the frontier, heard whispers about the fat woman playing doctor, heard snickers when she bent to lift a medical bag no one else could even budge. But somehow the sheriff's words cut deeper. Maybe because Copper Falls had been her last hope, a place she prayed might finally care more about her skill than the 370 pounds she carried on her bones. "I'll remind you," Ellie said evenly, forcing her voice to stay calm, "that I'm the one who stitched up your boy when that Mustang dragged him. He wouldn't be walking on that leg now if I hadn't been fit enough then." A few men shifted uncomfortably. The sheriff opened his mouth, perhaps to fire back, when the boarding-house door slammed inward so violently the glass rattled in its frame. A big, wild-looking trapper filled the doorway, beard iced over, breath coming in harsh white clouds. Snow clumps clung to his boots. His eyes locked on Ellie with a desperate, hunted look. "You the nurse?" he gasped. Ellie was already reaching for her bag. "I am. What's the emergency?" "Jasper Kane," the trapper panted. "Mountain man. Lives 20 miles north. Grizzly got him 3 days ago. Tore his left side open. He's burning with fever, talking crazy. Doc Morrison's gone to Denver. You're the only medical soul within 100 miles. Please, he's saved my life twice. I can't let him die alone. Will you come?" Someone in the room snorted softly. "She'll never make 20 miles in that snow," a man muttered. "Not with all that weight." Ellie ignored him. Her heart hammered, not with fear, but with the familiar fierce clarity that always came when a life hung in the balance. "How bad is the bleeding now?" she demanded. "Is he conscious? Any sign of black streaks near the wounds?" "Bandages soaked," the trapper said. "He stitched himself, but it's gone bad. Flesh looks angry, smells wrong. He keeps calling on God and his dead mother. In other words, dying." Ellie swung her heavy cloak around her shoulders, cinched the strap of her bulging medical bag across her chest. "Saddle my horse," she told the innkeeper. "I leave in 5 minutes." The sheriff barked a bitter laugh. "If he dies, that's on you, Miss Caldwell." Ellie met his eyes, steady as a rifle barrel. "If he dies, it won't be because I failed to try." She turned to the trapper. "Take me to him." As the door slammed behind them and the wind howled in, somewhere out in the frozen mountains, a mauled, fevered man lay between this world and the next, waiting for the obese nurse Copper Falls didn't trust, but who might be the only person alive who could pull him back. If you were standing in that little clinic, watching her choose to ride into the storm for a stranger, where would you be watching from? What town? What country? What little corner of the world are you listening from right now? The climb into the northern mountains was brutal. Snowdrifts rose higher than Ellie's knees. The wind sliced through wool and leather as if they were nothing, and the narrow trail twisted upward like a serpent determined to throw horses and riders into ravines. Yet Ellie endured every mile without complaint. Her breath came harsh, her thighs burned, her fingers grew numb on the reins. But her mind was locked on one truth. A man was dying, and she could not let him die alone. By the time they reached Jasper Kane's cabin, dawn was nothing more than a pale smear across the sky. Smoke barely drifted from the chimney. The door hung slightly ajar. The trapper, Samuel, dismounted first and pushed it open. The smell hit Ellie like a blow. Blood, sweat, infection, and something darker. The metallic tang of a body that had fought too long and was losing. She stepped inside. Jasper Kane lay on a rough-hewn bed, his massive frame dwarfing the cot beneath him. Even half dead, he looked impossibly strong, 6'11" at least, broad-shouldered, muscled from decades of wilderness labor. Dark hair clung to his forehead in damp curls, his beard matted from fevered sweating. His left side was swathed in crude bandages already soaked through, staining the blankets beneath him a deep rust-colored red. When Samuel spoke his name, Jasper's eyes cracked open, blue, shockingly vivid even through fever glaze. They drifted over the room before landing on Ellie. For a moment, he simply stared, not at her size. Most people stared there first, eyes dropping with pity or disdain. Not at her heavy winter cloak or the bulging medical bag at her side. He stared at her face. Who? His voice was raw, barely air. "I'm Miss Eleanor Caldwell," she said, moving toward the bed. "A nurse. Samuel brought me to help you." Jasper blinked slowly, something painfully gentle warming his fever-bright eyes. "An angel," he whispered. "He brought me an angel." Ellie swallowed hard. She heard that word so rarely. Beautiful, heavenly, impossible. Most people called her that heavy woman, or the fat nurse, or Miss Caldwell. Do you really think you can climb those stairs? But in Jasper's voice there was no mockery, only gratitude, and something else, reverence, even in delirium. She lowered herself to his bedside, forcing her mind back into clinical focus. "I need to see the wounds, Mr. Kane." "Jasper," he murmured. "All right, Jasper." She peeled back the bandages. Samuel sucked in a breath. Jasper didn't move, though the cords in his neck tightened in pain. 4 long gashes, each deeper than the width of Ellie's finger, sliced diagonally across his torso. Some of his stitches had torn. Angry red swelling surrounded the deepest wounds, with streaks of dusky shading spreading outward, a sign the infection had begun its march into the bloodstream. "Why didn't you come to town sooner?" Ellie demanded, anger and sorrow twisting together in her voice. "Couldn't ride," Jasper rasped. "Didn't want to burden anyone." Samuel swore. "Man kills a grizzly with his bare hands but won't ask for help." Jasper's eyes fluttered. "Didn't think anyone'd come?" Ellie's chest tightened. Too many patients had said something similar. Too many had believed they didn't deserve care, especially from someone like her, a woman the frontier resented simply for existing in a large body she refused to shrink. She turned to Samuel. "Boil water, a lot of it. Bring every clean cloth you have, and keep the fire hot. We'll need the cabin warm for hours." Samuel hurried to obey, and Ellie returned her focus to Jasper. He watched her through half-lidded eyes. "You're strong," he murmured. Ellie blinked, caught off guard. "I beg your pardon?" "When you leaned over me," he whispered. "Your hands, steady, sure, strong hands. Haven't seen hands like that in a long time." Ellie felt heat rise to her cheeks, though she forced herself to remain professional. "Strength is necessary for my work." "Good," he whispered, eyes drifting shut. "Means I'm in good hands." She should have dismissed the comment. Instead, it sank into her chest like an ember, warming a place long cold. Outside, the wind screamed across the mountain like a wounded animal. Inside, Ellie prepared her tools. Jasper's fever was rising. The infection was deepening. The hours ahead would be bloody, brutal, and uncertain. Samuel returned with boiling water. Ellie positioned herself at Jasper's side, bandages ready, instruments laid out. Her pulse steadied. "I'm going to save your life," she whispered to Jasper, though he was barely conscious. "But you'll have to fight with me." Jasper's lips moved faintly. "Been fighting a long time." She brushed his hair from his forehead in a rare, gentle gesture. "Fight a little longer." And just as she picked up the scalpel, just as the real battle began, Jasper's eyes opened again. This time, they focused, intense, searching. "Don't leave me," he whispered. The words hit her with unexpected force. "I won't," Ellie said quietly. "I promise." And for the first time in years, someone believed her. The hours that followed were some of the most grueling Ellie had ever endured in her 8 years as a frontier nurse. She had performed battlefield-level procedures in makeshift barns, delivered babies in snowstorms, and stitched gunshot wounds under candlelight. But nothing compared to scraping infection from the torn flesh of a man as large and powerful as Jasper Kane, while he fought for his life beneath her hands. By the time she finished the last round of debridement, sweat plastered her hair to her forehead. Her fingers trembled from strain. Her back screamed from bending over his massive torso for so long, but she didn't stop, not for a moment. Outside, daylight had long since faded into storm-tinted twilight. Snow hammered against the cabin walls, wind howling like wolves in the valley. Inside, the fire blazed hot enough to make her cheeks burn as she worked. Jasper drifted in and out of consciousness, groaning when she reached a particularly deep pocket of infected flesh. But every time she thought he might slip away fully, his eyes would flutter open, blue, bright, even through fever, and search for her. Each time she met his gaze. "I'm here. Stay with me." Only when she'd finished cleaning and stitching every wound did she allow herself to sit back, chest heaving, hands aching. Jasper's breathing was shallow, but steadier than before. She layered fresh bandages, checked his pulse, propped him carefully on his uninjured side to ease his lungs. Then came the vigil. The storm outside had worsened, trapping them with no chance of rescue if Jasper took a turn for the worse. Samuel had left earlier to try and bring more supplies once the weather cleared, but Ellie doubted he'd make it far in these conditions. So she stayed by Jasper's side hour after hour, feeding him water mixed with crushed willow bark, cooling his forehead with damp cloths, whispering steady encouragement each time his breathing faltered. Around midnight, the fever surged. Jasper jolted upright with a strangled cry, his entire body trembling with the violent spike. Ellie pushed him back gently but firmly. "Easy," she soothed. "You're safe, Jasper. Lie back. Try to breathe for me." He wasn't listening. His eyes were wild, unfocused. His strength, so impressive when he lifted logs or quartered elk, was now dangerous, the fever giving raw power to his limbs. Ellie braced both arms against his chest, putting her full weight into holding him down. He was burning. God, he was burning. "It hurts," he gasped. "Everything hurts. Eleanor, Eleanor." "I know," she whispered, heartbreaking. "Fever is the body's last battle. You just have to survive it. You have to stay still." His hand shot out, gripping her wrist. She felt the desperation in it, not pain, not fear, but something deeper, older, rawer. "Don't go," he begged. "Please, don't leave me." "I'm not going anywhere," Ellie said. "You're not alone." Jasper's gaze sharpened for a moment, piercing through the fever haze. I've been alone for 15 years. His voice cracked on the last word. Ellie swallowed hard. She knew that kind of loneliness too well, the kind that hollowed a person out until they became more shadow than flesh. "You're not alone now," she said firmly. "Not tonight." He sagged back onto the cot, breath shuddering, fever raging like wildfire inside him. Then suddenly, too suddenly, his breathing faltered, slowed, became ragged. That was when he whispered it. "If I die tonight, at least let me feel your touch once." Ellie froze. "Jasper," she whispered, "you don't know what you're saying." He looked at her with fever-bright, heartbreaking clarity. "I do. I know I'm dying, or close to it. And before I go, I just want to be touched by someone who sees me as a man, not a monster of the mountains, not a patient, not a brute." "Jasper." She tried to breathe, but something tightened painfully in her chest. "You touched me earlier," he whispered, "when you held my face to keep me grounded. It was the first gentle touch I felt since my mother died. If I die, let me die remembering that feeling on my skin." Ellie's throat closed. Her hands moved without thought. Slowly, reverently, she cupped his face again, fevered, unshaven, too hot beneath her palms. His eyes fluttered shut. A shudder of relief rolled through his massive body. "Eleanor." His voice was a sigh, a prayer, a surrender. "You're not dying," she whispered fiercely. He smiled faintly. "Then this is the first real mercy I've had in years." She stroked his temple with her thumb, ran her hand gently down his beard, let her fingers rest against the strong line of his jaw. Human touch, not clinical, not cold, not detached, warm, intentional, seen. And as her hands moved, Jasper's breathing steadied, not healed, but anchored, held together by a fragile thread of human connection. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, a dying man held on to life because for the first time in 15 years, he was not facing the darkness alone. Hours passed. Slowly, the fever crested. Slowly, his skin cooled. Slowly, his pulse steadied. Ellie did not sleep. Her hands never left him. Just before dawn, Jasper stirred. His eyes opened, clearer, focused, aware. "You stayed," he murmured. "Of course I stayed." His lips curved in the faintest smile. "Then I guess I have a reason to live after all." For the first time since the bear attack, Jasper Kane slept through the morning without fever, tearing him awake. Ellie watched his chest rise and fall in slow, steady breaths. No longer the frantic flutter of a body fighting for survival. His skin, once burning hot, had cooled to a healthier warmth. The storm outside had calmed too, leaving a still white hush over the mountains. Exhaustion pressed on her like a hand between her shoulder blades, but relief, deep, trembling relief, kept her upright. She changed his bandages carefully, rehydrated the carbolic solution, and checked every stitch. Jasper didn't stir. She found herself brushing a lock of hair from his forehead again, not as a nurse, but with a tenderness she didn't mean to reveal. "You fought hard," she whispered. "Now let me keep you alive." Later that morning, Jasper blinked awake. His blue eyes, no longer fever-bright, but startling in their clarity, found her instantly. He didn't look confused or delirious. He looked grateful. "How long was I out?" he asked, voice rough. "You slept 8 hours straight," Ellie said. "A miracle, given your condition." "I think you were the miracle," Jasper murmured. Ellie busied herself with the kettle on the stove to hide the warmth blooming across her face. "Don't flatter me, Mr. Kane." "Jasper," he corrected softly. "I want you to call me Jasper." She hesitated. "All right." Jasper. He smiled, small, weary, but real. And I'd like to call you Eleanor, unless you prefer Ellie. No one calls me Eleanor? Then I will. Something in her chest tightened. She turned back to him with a bowl of broth. Let's get you fed. You need strength. He let her lift his head and spoon the broth to his lips. He didn't look away from her once. Halfway through the bowl, he whispered, "You stayed all night, didn't you?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because you needed me." Jasper's breath caught. "Eleanor, I remember some of it. The fever, your hands on my face." Ellie froze. "You touched me like I mattered," he said quietly. She swallowed. "You do matter." He stared at her, that intensity that both steadied and unsettled her. "No one's touched me with care in 15 years. She looked down at the spoon in her hand. "No one's touched me with any kind of affection in about as long." Silence filled the cabin, thick and fragile. Then Jasper whispered, "Would it be all right if I touched your hand?" Ellie blinked, stunned. "Why?" "Because last night you gave me something human and warm, something I haven't had since before I grew this beard." His lips curved slightly. "And I want to know what it feels like to give something back." Her heart pounded, but she extended her hand. Jasper lifted it with surprising gentleness. His fingers were rough and calloused, his grip warm but cautious, as if he feared she might break. He brushed his thumb over her knuckles. "You have strong hands," he murmured. "They have to be strong," she said. "My work demands it." "I like that," he whispered. "I like everything about your strength." Her breath trembled, but she didn't pull away. The days that followed unfolded with a quiet rhythm, intimate, domestic, tender, in ways neither of them anticipated. Every morning, Ellie boiled water, cleaned Jasper's wounds, checked for infection, and fed him. Jasper grew stronger by the day. His fever never returned. His appetite came back. His voice steadied, and their conversations deepened. He told her about the life he'd lived in these mountains, the winters that could kill a careless man, the solitude that scarred as deeply as any claw. He admitted moments of weakness, lonely nights when he wondered what kind of man he had become without community, without warmth, without touch. Ellie told him about medical school, about being the largest student in every classroom, about professors who praised her skill but doubted she had the stamina for field work. She told him about towns that dismissed her because of her size, not her talent, about patients who loved her work but not her. "You've been carrying the world on your shoulders," Jasper said one evening as she stirred stew over the fire. "So have you," she replied. "Only your burden lives on the outside." They shared a small smile. Every evening after treatment, Jasper insisted she sit beside him, not on the far chair, but on the edge of the bed, close enough that he could feel her presence. "Your being near makes the pain easier," he said one night. "That's not medical science." "No," he agreed. "It's just truth." When she checked his bandages, he no longer flinched, but he also didn't hide the way his breath deepened when her fingers brushed his skin. And Ellie couldn't ignore the warmth that pulsed low in her stomach every time he watched her with that quiet intensity, like she was something precious and rare. One afternoon, as snow glittered outside the window, Jasper shifted slightly and winced. "You shouldn't move on your own yet," Ellie said, tightening a fresh bandage. "I'm tired of lying down," he muttered. "You're recovering from a near-fatal injury. Be patient." He huffed. "I'm not patient." "Obviously." He gave her a narrow look, then softened. "Eleanor, will you stay a little longer, even after I'm healed?" She stilled. "Do you mean stay until you can manage on your own?" "No." He caught her hand gently. "I mean stay with me." Her breath caught. "Jasper, you barely know me." "I know enough. I know your strength, your kindness, your courage, your hands that saved my life, your eyes that never looked away from the worst of my wounds." His grip tightened slightly. "And I know that when you touched my face that night, something in me woke up, something I thought had died." Ellie's throat tightened. "You were delirious," she whispered. "I was dying," he corrected. "Delirium strips away lies. What I said then, what I asked for, what I felt, none of it was confusion." She shook her head, overwhelmed. "Jasper, your life is here. Mine is wherever people need medical care." "My life," he murmured, "is with the person who saved it." He lifted her hand to his lips, not quite kissing it, but close enough that she felt his breath warm on her skin. "Stay," he whispered, "or at least think about staying." The fire crackled softly. Snow fell in gentle sheets outside the window. Inside the cabin, Ellie's heart beat louder than either, and for the first time in years she wondered what it might feel like to belong somewhere, to someone. The snow finally broke 3 days later, the storm clouds lifting to reveal a sky so blue it looked freshly scrubbed. Ellie took the rare stretch of clear weather to restock the water barrels outside, gather fallen branches for the fire, and sweep the porch now half buried in white drifts. Jasper watched her through the cabin window, his expression quiet and unreadable. "You move like you've lived in these mountains your whole life," he said when she stepped back inside, stamping snow from her boots. "I move like a woman who's learned to survive anywhere she's needed," Ellie replied, tugging off her mittens. Jasper smiled softly, but something in his eyes shifted, something troubled. She noticed immediately. "What is it?" He hesitated. "While you were out there, Samuel came back." Ellie stiffened. "Is he hurt? Did something happen?" "No, but—" Jasper exhaled slowly. "He brought news from town." A knot formed in Ellie's stomach. "What kind of news?" Jasper motioned for her to sit beside him on the bed. She did, heart quickening. "Eleanor," he said gently, "the town is looking for you." Her breath halted. "Looking for me? Why?" "Because you disappeared," Jasper said. "Your clinic was found empty. The boarding house owner said your bed hadn't been slept in for nights. They thought you were taken, or worse." Ellie pressed a hand to her chest. She hadn't intended to be gone so long, but with Jasper's life hanging by a thread, time had slipped through her fingers. Jasper watched her with quiet concern. "Samuel said the sheriff and a search party plan to ride north tomorrow. They think whoever sent for you might have harmed you." Ellie blinked hard. "They think I was kidnapped?" Jasper nodded. "Samuel told them he brought you to me, but they didn't believe him." Because of course they wouldn't. In town, Ellie was the fat nurse, useful but forgettable. The idea that a mountain man 20 miles out would need her, request her, rely on her, that didn't fit their small-minded expectations. Ellie swallowed thickly. "If they come here, what will they think?" Jasper held her gaze. "They'll see you caring for a man they don't approve of, and that's not all." Her chest tightened. "There's more." "Sheriff Wilkes," Jasper said slowly, "is the brother of the banker who stole my fiancée 15 years ago. Wilkes never forgave me for leaving civilization behind. He claims I disgraced his family by refusing to accept her choice. He's wanted to drag me back into town for years, claiming I'm a danger, a wilderness brute, a man unfit for society. He believes the mountains don't belong to people like me. Ellie stared at him. People like you. People who can't be controlled, Jasper said simply. Men who answer to no one. Men who don't bow to town authority. Wilkes hates that I've stayed up here, living on my own terms. Ellie's pulse quickened. If he finds me here, he'll say I coerced you, Jasper finished. Or worse. The words hung between them, heavy as snowfall. Ellie rose and paced. They'll misunderstand everything. They'll see my size and assume I couldn't travel alone. They'll see you, your strength, your isolation, and think you forced me to stay. Jasper's expression tightened. That's exactly what Wilkes wants. Anger flared hot in Ellie's gut. I came here of my own will. I stayed because you needed care, and I continued staying because... She stopped. Because what? Jasper watched her with a softness that made her knees weak. Because what, Eleanor? She took a shaky breath. Because I wanted to. Jasper's eyes darkened with something deep and unspoken. Would you still want to stay if Wilkes comes? Ellie turned away. I don't know. Silence pulsed between them. After a long moment, Jasper shifted, pulling himself more upright despite the pain. There's something you don't know, he said quietly. Something I should have told you before. Ellie turned back slowly. What is it? Jasper's jaw tightened. The attack you saved me from wasn't the first time someone tried to kill me, and the bear wasn't hunting me by chance. Ellie froze. What are you saying? That grizzly was already injured, a bullet wound in its flank. Jasper's voice lowered. Someone shot it, then followed its trail, straight toward my camp. Her heart hammered. You think someone used the bear to finish the job? Jasper nodded once. I don't have enemies in the mountains, only in town. Sheriff Wilkes? Ellie whispered. He wants my land, Jasper said softly. Wants authority over this territory, and he'll do anything, to drag me back under his thumb. Ellie pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. If the sheriff tried to orchestrate your death, he'll certainly try to use you to destroy me, Jasper finished. The room seemed to shrink around her. The fire crackled quietly. Snow fell in gentle sheets outside, innocent as lace. Inside, danger coiled like a snake at their feet. Jasper reached for her hand. His touch was warm, steady, despite the storm inside them both. Eleanor, he said softly, I won't let anyone take you. Not for saving my life, not for caring for me, not for choosing to stay here even one day longer than necessary. Her breath trembled. He's the law. He has power. Then let him come, Jasper said, eyes hardening into the fierce determination of a man who'd survived wilderness, heartbreak, and death itself. I won't hide, and I won't surrender. He squeezed her hand, gentle but resolute. You are not alone, he murmured. Not anymore. And Ellie, exhausted, frightened, but flooded with warmth she hadn't felt in years, realized the truth she'd been avoiding. She didn't want to go back, not to town, not to loneliness, not to a world that saw her as less. But staying meant facing conflict, danger, accusations that could destroy them both. Yet when Jasper looked at her, really looked at her, fear loosened its grip. Tell me what you want, he whispered. Ellie swallowed. I want to be somewhere I'm valued, wanted, needed. Jasper's voice dropped to a tender, aching softness. Then stay. Thunder rumbled faintly in the distance, another storm gathering, and Ellie knew. The real storm would arrive with Sheriff Wilkes. The next morning dawned gray and sharp, the kind of cold that carried warning in its teeth. Ellie had barely finished changing Jasper's bandages when she heard it, the distant crunch of multiple horses cutting through hard snow. Jasper stiffened. They're early. Ellie moved to the small window overlooking the trail. 4 riders. Sheriff Wilkes at the front, broad-shouldered under a heavy coat, his badge catching what little light broke through the clouds. Behind him rode 2 deputies, and a man Ellie recognized from town, Mr. Halpern, the boarding-house owner. Her pulse spiked. They came armed. "They intend to take me," Jasper said quietly, "and they'll use you to justify it." He tried to rise, gritting against the pain, but Ellie pressed a firm hand to his shoulder. "You can't fight them like this," she said. "You'll rip your stitches. Let me handle the talking." Jasper looked at her with that fierce, almost aching tenderness she'd grown too used to. "Ellie, he's not coming here for justice. He's coming here for blood." "Then we won't give him any," she whispered. "Not yours?" Snow crunched under boots as the men approached the cabin door. Sheriff Wilkes didn't bother knocking. He pushed the door open and stepped inside like he owned the place. "Mornin', Miss Caldwell," he said, removing his hat with exaggerated politeness. "Town's been worried sick about you. Imagine our surprise when we heard you'd run off with a mountain man." "I didn't run anywhere," Ellie said calmly. "I was called for a medical emergency." Wilkes eyed Jasper on the bed, his expression twisting with satisfaction. So the stories were true. Jasper Kane, half dead, and harboring a stolen woman. Ellie's jaw tightened. "I wasn't stolen. I was summoned to save his life. He had a severe infected wound. I couldn't leave him to die." Wilkes stepped closer, his boots leaving melted prints on the floorboards. "Miss Caldwell, this man is dangerous. He's lived out here too long. He's disobedient, unpredictable. And now," his eyes flicked to Ellie, sweeping over her size with thinly veiled contempt, "he's keeping a woman captive who doesn't have the physical ability to leave." Heat flared in Ellie's chest. "I traveled here willingly. I'm not captive. And I resent your implication that my size means I'm incapable of movement or choice." Wilkes smirked. "You expect the law to believe a man like him and a woman like you are here together by choice?" "She saved my life," Jasper growled, struggling to sit up despite Ellie's attempts to steady him. "She stayed because she's good. Because she has a heart. Something you wouldn't recognize if it hit you full force." The deputies shifted uneasily, but Wilkes only smiled wider. "You always were good at poetry, Jasper. Shame it won't help you today." He gestured toward him. "You're coming with us. You're under arrest for obstructing medical personnel, unlawful detainment of a woman, and suspicion of homicide." Ellie snapped her head toward him. "Homicide?" "A trapper named Miller went missing last fall," Wilkes said gruffly. "Last seen near Kane's territory." "Miller?" Jasper barked a laugh, even through the pain. "He fell through a frozen creek. I pulled him out. Ask Samuel. He carried the man to town." "We'll sort all that out in jail," Wilkes said, nodding for his deputies to advance. Ellie stepped between them and Jasper, her voice trembling but unwavering. "You will not take him, not like this." Wilkes snorted. "Miss Caldwell, step aside." "No." The single syllable hung in the air like a bullet. Her pulse thundered, her hand shook. But she held her ground. "You accuse him without proof," Ellie continued. You claim I'm captive when I've told you plainly I'm here by choice. You ignore the medical emergency that brought me here. If you take him now, you'll be killing a man who is still healing from life-threatening injuries." Wilkes sneered. "You've known him less than a week. You don't know what he's capable of." "Oh, I know exactly what he's capable of," Ellie said, voice steady. "He's capable of surviving a bear attack alone, of enduring agony without complaint, of thanking me for every painful stitch I placed, of begging, not for rescue, not for selfish comfort, but for simple human touch because he believed he was dying alone." Wilkes faltered. She pressed on. "He's capable of gentleness that I've never seen from any man in town. He's capable of respect, of honesty, of vulnerability. That is what I know of Jasper Kane." The deputies exchanged looks. Wilkes flushed with anger. "Enough. Step aside or be charged with obstruction." Ellie met his glare head-on. "I'm not obstructing the law. I'm practicing medicine. And I won't allow you to drag a critically wounded man out into winter conditions because of your personal vendetta." Wilkes reached for her arm. Jasper surged upright with a roar, pain and rage blazing through him. "Don't touch her." The room erupted. The deputies jerked back. Wilkes froze. Ellie stood trembling, her breath sharp and rapid. Jasper's voice dropped low and lethal. "You want to fight, Wilkes? Come back when I'm healed. But if you lay a single hand on the woman who saved my life, I'll gladly give you the fight you've been begging for all these years." The cabin fell silent. Wilkes lowered his hand slowly. "This isn't over," he spat. "Not by a long shot." He turned, stormed out, and the deputies followed. Snow swallowed their shapes as they rode off. Ellie collapsed onto the nearest chair, trembling violently. Jasper slumped back against the pillows, his breath ragged. "Ellie, I'm sorry." "For what?" she whispered. "For being the reason danger came to your door." Ellie looked at him, really looked at him, and something inside her clicked into immovable place. "You're not the danger," she said softly. "You're the reason I stayed." Outside, the wind picked up, sweeping snow in restless spirals. Inside the cabin, the storm had only just begun. The wind had quieted by late afternoon, leaving the mountains wrapped in a strange, breathless stillness. Ellie had finished checking Jasper's wounds again, healing but still fragile, and was preparing broth when she heard him speak softly behind her. "Ellie, are you afraid?" She turned, the wooden spoon still in her hand. "Afraid of what happened?" "Yes. Anyone would be." He shook his head. "Afraid of staying here, with me. Afraid of what Wilkes will do next. Afraid that helping me has ruined your life." Ellie set the spoon down. The cabin glowed amber from the fire, wrapping the room in warmth. Outside, the world was all ice and shadow, but inside, it felt safe, almost sacred. "I'm not afraid of you," she said, crossing to sit beside his bed. "Not once. You're the only man who's ever looked at me without mockery or disgust. You're the only person who's ever trusted me this completely. And you're the only person who's ever made me feel seen." Jasper swallowed hard, emotion tightening his throat. "When you touched my face that night, when I thought I was dying, it wasn't just comfort, it was hope. I thought, if I live, maybe I can be worthy of her someday." Ellie's breath caught. "You already were. You just didn't believe it." Snowflakes drifted past the window, slow and soft, like the sky had grown calmer now that the worst was over. Ellie reached for Jasper's hand, large, rough, scarred, and held it between her own. "I don't know what happens next," she admitted, Wilkes could ride up tomorrow with a warrant. The town may never accept me again. Your recovery still has risks. Families, rumors, men with badges, they all might try to tear us apart. Jasper squeezed her hand with surprising strength. Let them try. Hard truth lived in his eyes, but so did something gentler, something steady, protective, enduring. I can't promise you peace, he said, but I can promise that you'll never face any of it alone. Her voice trembled as she answered, and I can promise you the same. I didn't save you just to walk away. Outside, the sky began to clear, a thin band of pale gold breaking through the clouds as if the world itself were offering a quiet blessing. Ellie leaned her forehead against Jasper's, careful of his injuries, and closed her eyes. You're safe here, Jasper whispered, as long as you want to be. It feels like home, Ellie replied softly, if you'll have me. He let out a shaky breath that almost sounded like a laugh. Ellie, I think I was yours the moment you touched my face. The fire crackled. Snow gleamed. Two people who had lived too long in loneliness sat wrapped in a warmth neither had expected to find. But storms still lingered beyond the mountains. Men still whispered in town. The sheriff's return was a matter of when, not if. Love had taken root, but whether it was strong enough to survive the world outside the cabin remained uncertain. And maybe that was the question the mountains themselves were asking. When danger returns, will their fragile, newfound love be enough? Some stories aren't about perfection. They're about two wounded souls finding, in each other, the one place the world can't reach. Ellie and Jasper didn't fall in love because life was kind. They fell in love because, for once, they chose to hold on instead of letting go. And maybe that's why their story touches us. Because somewhere we all want a place where our strength is seen, our softness is safe, and our touch is welcome. If you're listening to this from far away, tell me, where in the world are you hearing this story from right now? And if you still believe in love that heals, stay close. Another tale waits just ahead.